It's 8:06 and we're flying through this Friday morning. Thanks for letting us be a part of your routine as we launch into the weekend. Plenty to talk about here. Coming up in 30 minutes, Byron York has some very serious questions about then Vice President Joe Biden using a pseudonym, a fake name for official government emails. Why on earth would an honest guy like Joe need to do that? I don't know. But until we have that conversation, we're all going to be using our pseudonyms now. We want to hear what your pseudonym is at 888-630-9625. What pseudonym do you think Trump used when he was conducting business, or any other politician? What would Reagan's pseudonym be? 888-630-WMAL. I'm Sterling Gray, sitting in for Larry O'Connor, alongside
Charisse Homestead.
Charisse Homestead, sitting in for Patrice Onwuka. Joining us right now, Robert O'Donnell. He is, of course, a retired NYPD homicide detective. We call on Rob at various times to talk about the police officer's perspective on rising crime and policies that have been put in place that handcuff cops and the tough job that cops have. But, Rob, before we get into that, and first of all, good morning. Good to have you, my friend.
Good morning, Larry.
Before we get into that, I do want your initial reaction now to these reports that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and the other 4 suspects involved with the 9/11 attacks are on the verge of getting a plea deal from the Biden administration where they would avoid the death penalty. And you were there that day. You were there on September 11th, 2001 in New York at Ground Zero, and you participated in the cleanup efforts where you helped recover the remains of your brothers in the NYPD and the NY Fire Department. Your reaction to this news?
It's literally infuriating. And what's more infuriating is the fact that I've received this letter that has been received. Now, it was dated August 1st, but it was received by some of the families that gave it to me, and I received it from 3 different families on Friday, and 2 of them received it on this past Monday. And they're only given till Monday, this coming Monday, to respond to questions and comments, not any disagreements, not in the opposition, just questions and comments, and send it to the FBI comment line. They're giving them a week.
Wow.
It's just ridiculous. The mere fact that this letter went out shows this is pretty much a done deal. They do say, PR-wise, that they're going to take the family's opinion into the case, but the mere fact that they're just receiving the letters this last Friday and this Monday, and they need to respond by this coming Monday, is just an egregious act of justice.
Rob, this has obviously been dragged out for 2 decades now, and apparently, according to sources, the reason this is so mired down now, and the reason that the Biden administration's Justice Department has just decided let's just be done with it with the plea deal, is because so much of the defense has been mired down in the so-called torture and waterboarding tactics by the CIA. Do you have any reaction to that aspect of it, and whether there really is a reality that any justice can be done here, given how messy it is?
No, and I think this is more of just a Biden administration looking for some sort of win to say they are the guy that closed Gitmo. He's the administration that closed Gitmo, and regardless, they're not closing Gitmo. They will. I mean, Gitmo's our base. We're not giving it up unless Cuba tries to forcefully take it back, and they'll never do that. So it's not like Gitmo goes away. These 4 detainees may go away, and you know what? These 4 detainees should have gone away 15 to 18 years ago.
So shifting gears just a little bit, Rob, we're DC, crime, ridiculous. We've got reporting now that across the city, violent crime is up 37%, homicides are up 25%. It's summertime. A lot of young people are running around the city right before school gets started, and the mayor and the police chief think that curfews will be the answer to keeping kids, particularly in 7 of the city's wards, off the streets after 11 p.m. or after midnight on school nights. Is this just a Band-Aid solution? I mean, more cameras, more CCTV cameras hanging around the city, maybe plussing up some benefits to entice police officers and this curfew. Is this really what's needed right now, or is this just a quick solution to a longer-term problem?
I don't even think it's a quick solution. Now, the CCTV cameras, they'll be good for after the crime is committed, for after the fact, to help identify, to help have evidence to convict people. But they've spent 2, maybe 3 years now hardening these juvenile criminals that have been given free rein across D.C. What do you think immediately now, because they say, oh, 11 or 12 o'clock, you guys have to cut it out now? Who's going to go out and enforce this? I mean, they have a police department that's not supported by their chain of command, not supported by their administrative system and mayor there. They're supposed to go out and risk. What happens when something goes bad, when they do try to arrest one of these hardened criminals for a curfew offense and it goes south, it goes bad, they resist, they flee, they fight, something happens to one of these, juveniles, and we'll see the confirmation pictures and everything like that. Are these officers really going to be proactive going out there and dealing with this, knowing they don't have the backing of their administration?
Rob, in general, do curfews work, though, if done right and if enforced, when you do have a spike like this and you can trace it back to too many young people on the streets with nothing to do but cause chaos? Can a curfew work?
A curfew works for just your everyday juveniles that just go out there and are hanging out and bored and doing nefarious things after hours. That's not the case here. You have hardened 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds carrying guns, carjacking people in the middle of the day. Do we really think a curfew overnight's really going to do something? It needs to be part of a holistic approach where you support your police. There's proactive policing that supports that. The judicial revolving door stops and juveniles are being held accountable rather than putting right back on the street. I mean, they've molded based on their defunding the police status, and they say they didn't do that, but in 2020 they did do it, and now they're saying we want to pay these bonuses, we want to pay officers for recommending other officers for coming in. You could throw all the money you want in this, and we've talked about this all the time, Larry and Patrice. It's going to take years to make up for every single year that they had this mentality, and you don't forget that lack of support. You don't lack that at any given time. The mentality can change in a D.C. City Council, can change in the mayor's office when it gets hot. And believe me, if you go out there and start being proactive and holding juveniles accountable, there are going to be problems. They are going to push back. There are going to be tragedies. But you need to support your police to take back the city because they've seen what happens. And a Band-Aid like a simple curfew is not going to fix that.
Well, this brings up the crime bill, the D.C. crime bill that was passed by the city council. Even the mayor opposed parts of it. We saw Congress have to step in, Republicans in Congress kind of step in here. But do you think that there's anything that, is this bill, number one, going to make things worse? And number two, we talked even this yesterday about ending home rule and maybe Congress taking a stronger hand or someone else taking a stronger hand in terms of the city's management, especially when it comes to crime. Do you see that having maybe being part of the solution? Yeah.
Once crime gets out of control, which it has, I'm sorry, D.C. has descended into a place, and by no fault of law enforcement, it's just lack of support of law enforcement. This is when you get the big changes. Like, I mean, New York City swayed to a total Republican run under Mayor Giuliani because the people of the inner city, the people who lived in the project, the people of all demographics said enough was enough. And I think people in D.C. of all demographics are starting to say enough is enough. But a simple Band-Aid like this is just that. It's not going to fix the problem. It's only going to I don't think it's going to do much at all, to be honest with you.
Rob O'Donnell, thanks for joining us. And by the way, the vice president, what's your pseudonym? You have a fake name? What is it? Grizzly Treebeard? What do you got? What's your
Grizzly Treebeard? Afternoon radio guy, Larry.
Oh, that's right. He is now a radio host. We've created another monster up there in Pennsylvania. Thank you, Rob. Always good to talk to you, my friend. Go Navy. Rick Grinnell, former ambassador to Germany and former acting director of national intelligence under President Trump. He has a good way of summarizing news events into one single little tweet, or X as they call it. As with all the noise surrounding yesterday's revelations that President Biden used a fake name on his official government email server, and James Comer, chairman of the Oversight Committee, has subpoenaed all the unredacted emails. He wants to know what was discussed under the fake name. And everyone's, making excuses and fighting about it and arguing about it as usual on social media. Here's what Rick Grinnell said, and this is the only story that should have been at the top of the news last night across all the broadcasts. Let me just summarize it for you so you can soak it in. The President of the United States used a pseudonym to disguise his identity because he was getting money from foreigners while he was vice president. That's there's no other way around it. That's the story. That's the story, because these emails, including one that talked about scheduling a meeting with the president of Ukraine, why in the hell would you disguise your name on that email?
Yeah.
And several emails included CCs to Hunter Biden and Devin Archer, the people who were selling the Biden brand, including those phone calls that he just dropped in on to talk about the weather. The reason he used a fake name is so that it would avoid detection and FOIA requests, and now Comer's on top of it, and he's asked for those unredacted emails, and it's an absolute blockbuster in the scandal. And we want to know from you what your fake name is, by the way.
It should be. Well,
Patrice,
okay, so...
Do you really have a fake name, by the way? You said...
I do, and I'm not going to give it out on air because I use it for, business purposes.
What kind of business?
Legitimate, something that my mom would be proud of business, not nothing
All right.
nothing unsavory whatsoever.
All right, understood.
So we were talking about maybe President Trump having a pseudonym. And I jotted down some ideas, Larry. Do you want to hear what I've got?
Yeah, what do you got?
Number 1, Hamburglar.
Oh, because he loves his... He loves McDonald's burgers. Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.
That may not. How about this one? Normandy Fire.
Wait,
Normandy Fire.
What's the connections there?
Well, I'm thinking
it does
of
sound
World
good.
War II, strong, brings the power of the leadership of the military, and he's fire when it comes to social media tweets. All right, this is my third one. Blonde Bond.
Well, the fact of the matter, we're joking, but the fact of the matter is Donald Trump does have a history of using fake names for various reasons, not necessarily for business, but usually to leak stories to the press. Back in his business days, not as president, he used the name John Barron once, which is interesting since he named his son Barron.
Barron, that's true.
He also used the name John Miller. And to pretend that he was a spokesperson, or to float ideas or gossip about himself to the media. I'm trying to think of the other name that he used here. I'm just scanning this story. I think that's the most John Barron. I think was the most famous one that Donald Trump used. What about you? Do you use a fake name? Because apparently everybody's doing it. Joe in Rockville. Let's face it, Joe Rockville is a great fake name.
That's a pretty good name.
Joe, what's your fake name, Joe?
Well, as I told the call screener, I don't have a fake name right now. However, there was a time when I won't identify the government agency, but I worked for a government agency in the Washington, D.C. area, which at a company, and the company was nothing more than a front for the government agency. And we actually used our real names, and actually Washington, D.C. area is full of these fake companies that are fronts for various government agencies.
Oh, interesting.
I'll let you know that. And we used our real names. However, when we had to go to headquarters for maybe a personnel issue or something like that, get insurance information or whatever, we had a fake name. We were not allowed to go into the agency building with our real name, and we had to sign in with a fake name.
That's
and I'll
hilarious.
Just tell you my first name. I'm not going to give you the last name, but I used Tony was my first name.
Tony.
Tony's a great fake name. Yeah.
And
Tony.
So in my boss
was it Tony Fauci?
No. But my boss had his fake name that when he would have to go into the headquarters building that he would use a fake name. So there's a lot of that in the Washington metropolitan area.
Interesting.
And it's interesting what these front companies do. So
listen, I know you could tell me, but then you'd have to kill me afterwards, Tony. So thank you for that.
I might be killed if I told you so.
God forbid.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we want to hear your fake names. You know what I'm going to go as now for my pseudonym all the time? Corey and Ganamort. That is the phoniest name I've ever heard in my life. It's 8:36 on O'Connor and Company this Friday, and Patrice Onwuka and I are with you. And coming up in 30 minutes, we hand it off to Chris Plant, if that's his real name. But first, Patrice, we've got Byron York. He is with the Washington Examiner. And Byron, thank you for joining us. This story about the Biden family took another turn yesterday as James Comer revealed that there was a pseudonym, Robert L. Peters, that then Vice President Biden used for emails. And I draw your attention to two in particular, if I could, Byron. One of them where Hunter Biden was copied on an email involving Robert L. Peters. It was a heads up for a phone call with the president of Ukraine, Mr. Poroshenko. And then there's this one, June 14th. It was delivered to Robert L. Peters by someone who worked in the vice president's office. Hunter Biden's copied on it, and it included his schedule card for the next day. That schedule card included multiple meetings with the prime minister of Ukraine. Byron, this seems like smoking gun kind of stuff. Why would a vice president need a fake name?
I, Robert L. Peters, do solemnly swear. I don't know. Look, anytime something really insane, seemingly insane happens, I say to myself, okay, has this ever been done before? I mean, is there some reasonable example of somebody having done this before, some previous vice president or president, and there's actually a reasonable explanation for it? I don't think there is one here. And beyond the pseudonym, what you were just describing, keeping Hunter Biden abreast of Joe Biden's activities as regards Ukraine is really damning because, of course, Ukraine was a big source of income for Hunter Biden and wanted it to be an even bigger source of income. And as we know, Joe Biden has denied any knowledge of all this stuff. So it's a huge development. I don't think Comer has yet gotten all of the entirely unredacted documents that he wants. But he needs to get them soon.
Yeah. And Patrice, I'll throw it to you, but let's just be clear. If those emails connecting Ukraine to Vice President Biden at the time and his son, Hunter Biden, on those emails, if they had his name, they would have showed up on multiple FOIA requests. That's why, I mean, to me, it seems logical. That's why you use a fake name, because it's connecting the actions of the vice president to his son, who is getting rich off Ukraine businessmen, with specific policy objectives involving leaders in Ukraine. I'll go ahead and throw it to you, Patrice.
Yeah, I can't see anything otherwise. But I'd love to shift gears just a little bit, Byron, because next week we're going into the first Republican National Committee debate. We've got 8 contenders who have made this debate stage. We will see how many of them actually show up, namely the top-ranking former President Trump. We were talking to Speaker Newt Gingrich earlier, and I asked him, who needs to have a blowout night and who is going to bow out after the night. And I'll ask you the same thing. I mean, who do you think needs to show really well, and who do you think is probably not gonna peter out after next week?
Well, I think that 7 of the candidates are really locked to show up. So I think it's going to be at least a 7-candidate debate. And the thing to think about is a debate with Trump and then a debate without Trump are just wildly different things. I mean, they're not going to be anything like each other. So I'm kind of thinking, just guessing, that Trump is not going to show up and is going to try to counter-program and distract attention from this and all of that. But, I mean, clearly you think that the person who needs to do well the most is Ron DeSantis, because this conventional wisdom has set in that his campaign is a mess, that he's a terrible campaigner, that he's on the way down. And I have to say, if you look at the Real Clear Politics average of national polls, his support today is half of what it was in January. Half. It's been a long, slow slide. We talk about Trump going up after the indictments. Well, DeSantis went down after the Trump indictments. They affected him too. So, I think he clearly needs to do well. And he's had this kind of embarrassing development. Nobody knows exactly how it happens, but a lot of his campaign prep documents have been posted on the internet. And so sort of we all know some of the things that, he was going to say that Chris Christie was a guy who was trying out for a show on MSNBC. Well, now if he says that about Chris Christie, you will think, oh, well, that's exactly in the script. So that didn't help one bit. Other people who are going to do well, you have to think Vivek Ramaswamy is going to do really well. He's a great talker, and I just imagine he will do well. Christie's whole deal will be attacking Trump. Now, if Trump isn't there, he'll just attack him anyway. I think one thing to really watch about this, I've seen some commentary saying, well, if Trump is not there, then all the candidates will just go after him. I don't think that's the case at all. I think certainly Christie will, because that's kind of the reason for being in his campaign. Mm-hmm. But everybody else, I've watched them just walk on eggshells and tiptoe around the Trump issues. They don't really want to talk about it all that much, and they're not going to just come out and they'll bash Trump all the time. They'll have a few gentle criticisms, but I just don't think it's going to be a Trump bashing affair because they know so much of their Republican audience supports Trump right now.
Yeah.
And the idea is if something changes and that support begins to soften or fall away, then they want to take advantage of it. And I don't think they think the way to do it is by trashing Trump in the debate.
Byron York, we'll have to leave it there. I just want to say one thing. The only reason you use a pseudonym is you're hiding something.
Yeah, like on a dating profile, who you really are, that you're married.
You have something you want to tell us?
You should be on a dating profile. No, I'm saying you as in those people. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
When I started my career, I was writing for Andrew Breitbart about being a conservative in the theater business, and I was still working in the theater business. I used a pseudonym. Yeah. My pen name was Stage Right.
Okay.
And all of my columns were under that name before I came up. But I was hiding something. I was hiding my real identity. That's why then Vice President Biden used a pseudonym. It's obvious. There is no other innocent explanation, especially knowing that these emails connected himself to his son and to Ukrainian business. What did Obama know? And when did he know
Why hasn't
it?
Obama said anything?
Yeah, thank you. All right, how about you? What are your pseudonyms? Because everybody's got one now. How about Andrew and Manassas? Andrew, you got a good pseudonym? I want to know how to address you from now on.
Yes, I went during security and recovery work. I went by Gandalf Dolphin.
Wow,
Gandalf Dolphin.
That is regal.
Okay.
Dolphin.
Okay.
Gandalf Dolphin. I've been a Tolkien fan my whole life.
Yeah.
My Twitter account even carries it. Anytime I can put Twitter in it, my dog's name is Bilbo.
So it's a little play on Gandalf. Gandalf Dolphin is basically like an extended Gandalf moniker, right?
That's right.
That's very
right.
Cool.
And my supervisor hated it. He's like, "Would you just get something like Dave Dash? This is so hard." I'm like, nope.
Good old John Smith, Andrew. All right, Andrew, love it. Have a good weekend.
Thanks,
how about Mike and Bowie? Mike, do you have some good pseudonyms for us?
Hey, good morning, Larry. Yeah, I do. I have two I've used over the years. One is a 1984 reference. It's less is more. And my other one is Phil. And my other one is Phil McCracken.
Phil McCracken.
Wow.
Oh boy.
I'm just going to let him sit there.
You
Mike.
are a very fun guy, Mike.
Everybody can fill it in. I remember those. Thank you, Michael. I remember the jokes when I was like 4 years old. Rush to the Outhouse by Willie Make It, illustrated by Betty Won't. Stupid jokes. Speaking of which, Danny in D.C. Danny, what's your pseudonym?
Hey, good morning, Larry. It's Richard Cranium, and that's the truth. I'm single.
Cranium.
Yeah. The license plates on my car actually say PFAHQU. And
wow.
I told people, I said, listen, you can call me two things. You can call me anything you want. Just don't call me late for dinner. I cook for myself, and don't ever call me SOB because we're going to have a fight. Because now you're bragging on my mother, and she was a saint.
Daddy in D.C. is really Richard Cranium.
Danny.
All right. Thanks, Dick.
Thanks, Danny.
It's 8:52. That's a wrap, Patrice. You have a great weekend. All right, thanks.
You too.
And on Monday, it looks like we've already lined up Pierre Delecto and Carlos Danger
Oh, my goodness.
to be guests, along with Robert L. Peters. That's a great get. How about you, Chris Plant? What have you got in store?
Robert L. Peters, I was listening to your excellent radio broadcast of Chris, and I, Robert L. Peters, do solemnly swear.
Yes.
Made me laugh out loud. That's pretty funny. I saw on CNN this morning, this is no big deal. There's nothing to see here. It is.
Yeah.
It's like North Korea living in the United States of America. There are media. And I gotta tell you, see the Washington Redskins come out with a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're pushing, apparently their new quarterback is Dylan Mulvaney. Did you see that? The new quarterback
exactly.
And the new general manager is just out of Harvard and Wharton. Elise Heinerscheid. Alyssa Heinerscheid is the new general manager.
I thought it was Sam Britton.
A friend of mine texted me last night and said, "Is it possible to miss Dan Snyder already?"